Welcome back to the Banners broadcast. I'm Chris Grenham. With me, as always, Nick Gelso of CLNS. Nick, how you feeling after that 1-4 road trip?
I feel like I just got beat down with the 2x4, Chris. Repeatedly.
That's fair.
I actually feel like we're back in the off season. It's been so long since we covered a game at the Garden, and we didn't travel this trip. Thank God.
Yeah, that would have been a tough trip to travel. My heart goes out to all the beat reporters that did, because that is a really, really tough trip. At least they got to go to Arizona, some nice weather. Denver's a cool city. Utah,
nice sightseeing. It's just the games weren't not worth watching. Did you stay up for all of them?
I did. Of course I did. It was wonderful, and it was just like going to bed angry after a lot of those
here's
games.
The thing, Chris. Like, you're like, okay, it's going to be a blowout. I could go to bed, and then I start to close my eyes while the game's on, and I'm half asleep, and then all of a sudden they're crawling back in. I'm like, this is like the typical Garden game where you're like, oh, it was a blowout win. Well, only they were going to lose. Yeah. It was a blowout win. We're going to get out of here early tonight, and then it goes to overtime.
Yeah, it's like I'm halfway done with my recap by the end of the third quarter, and then I have to rewrite the entire thing with 5 minutes left. It's one of those games, but it was tough. So it started in Indiana, where they lost 101-102, and that was kind of a weird game. They started slow. Victor Oladipo, obviously, at the game winner. He used 24 points, 12 rebounds. Then after Indiana,
is that the game where Kyrie threw the ball? No, that was Utah,
this was the next game. That was in Denver, where it was the Jamal Murray Kyrie show. They kind of went head to head. And there was plenty of storylines there. Kyrie had a great game. He went for 31, but it was Jamal Murray going for 48. That was pretty impressive. Obviously, he wanted to get to 50 points, so his time was expiring and the game was already in hand. He chalked up a three, and Kyrie didn't like that, so he politely took the ball and launched it 50 rows up into the stands. What do you think about that? I know it's been pretty overdone, but we haven't spoken since then. Do you trash Kyrie for doing that? Do you trash Jamal Murray for throwing that up? What's your deal there?
I mean, Jamal Murray, he's like I think that's his first ever 50-point game, right? I mean,
he's 21 years old.
Yeah, he's 21 years old. I mean, I don't think he realized the implication of it's kind of bad sportsmanship, I guess, to take that. It was worse sportsmanship for Kyrie to throw the ball in the stands, but it was kind of like a Rondo move. Not that I like Rondo, but I liked it a little bit. It was very Rondo. Rondo would have thrown it at the referee for some reason, for no apparent reason. But I liked it because it shows. I mean, I tweeted yesterday because it seems like, and we'll get deeper into what the issues may be, but it seems like Marcus Smart is the only guy that's really angry right now, and it's good to see Kyrie get annoyed. Now, of course, you're going to see that practice. We're recording on Tuesday. You'll be at practice soon. Yep. I think everybody's pretty pissed off, but the point is, it seemed at that point it was still like, oh, we're the Celtics. We'll get it together. Yeah, and it was good to see Kyrie get a little angry.
It was, and they were taking ownership after the final loss of the road trip in Portland the other night. It seemed like guys were owning up to it, but again, that can only go so far. At some point, it's got to start changing on the court. Like you said, there's been a tough schedule here. So they played Denver in Denver, tough place to play, and Denver's a very good team. They then went to Phoenix, which should have been
it's a joke.
A solid win, but they had
I'd rather them lose and do
claw their way back, push their way into overtime. Marcus Morris had game tying 3 at the end of the fourth quarter, and they
acted like they just won the NBA Finals. It was the whole event there. The spectacle was really annoying.
It was kind of tough to swallow because realistically it should have. But it was good to see. I think a lot of people were just relieved to see that there was some fight in them.
And what I liked was Kyrie passed up, and I would assume that was a play drawn up by Stevens to draw attention at the top for Kyrie, but having the confidence in Morris to hit that shot, and then Morris having the audacity to nail it at the buzzer, it was nice to see some execution down the stretch because we've not seen execution at all.
No, we really haven't. That was another perfect Brad Stevens ATO, which he's been known to do over the course of his career, so that was pretty awesome. But then they went to Utah. They dropped one in Utah, finished off the road trip in Portland, and lost 100-94 on Sunday night. So, not a great trip. A lot of people are complaining, like you said, about a lack of energy. There's Marcus Smart, a lot of market. Bill Sy on Celtics blog this morning put up a post saying that the Celtics need to start Marcus Smart, and there's a lot of feelings like that out there. I think there needs to be some sort of change until this team finds a flow, and that in the starting lineup, whether that means removing Gordon Hayward until he gets right, whether it means removing someone like Jaylen Brown, who's having trouble finishing at the rim, and remaining officials.
Well, but I think what comes out of a lot of this, Chris, is just the I don't know how to put it. I guess the concerns with Tatum. He's not been himself at all. Brown's not been himself at all. Hayward, you expect not to be himself.
Right.
And I feel like even taking ownership after the Portland game, that was kind of spearheaded by Marcus Smart. I mean, you saw it. I think it was at the end of the first half of that game, or maybe the Phoenix game, where Marcus kind of was jawing at the bench. Mm-hmm. It's like, come on,
wake up a little bit.
Wake up. And so I don't know if a lineup change. I'd love to get your take. I found it interesting about Kyrie's comments on bringing on a veteran. Is he referring to? Some people said, "Oh, that's a dig for missing LeBron." I almost think it was like, let's go after a guy like Kyle Korver.
Yeah, I don't think it was. A lot of people on Twitter were like, "Hey, that's Al Horford. What are you talking about?" People immediately responded like he was trashing Al Horford. I don't think that was the case at all.
Me either.
I forget what exactly it said, but I saw Alex Kungu had a pretty good tweet about that in reference to someone saying, this is ridiculous. He's not referring to Al Horford. He basically, here's Kungu's tweet right here. He said, this man was talking about a Jared Dudley, Vince Carter, Richard Jefferson type of vet. Little guys like little things like Gerald Green helping Jaylen Brown stay grounded when he was getting the short assist ever in his rookie year are the things we don't see that help a guy like. And he's right. I totally agree too.
I agree. I mean, let's face it, Kyrie benefits in every way, shape, or form from Al Horford, whether Al's scoring 20 and grabbing 10 or scoring 5 and grabbing 8. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it's not like he's saying we need to go out and get Carmelo Anthony, because that would just
please God, no. This happens every year.
Jump into the Charles River. I don't think that would bode too well for anyone involved.
You want to talk about a bad locker room, man. I mean, that would just be devastating. Danny would not do it.
I don't know who's going to go grab him. I have a feeling someone will, but there's a small group of teams that will, because teams like the Celtics and the Sixers and
the Lakers.
Yeah, no one's. Oh, jeez. Oh, man. Don't even get me started on that. That would be ridiculous, but that would be fun for internet content. I think that would be ideal.
Great segments. Yeah. We'd have a Lakers segment every week. That'd be great.
But, I agree. I mean, he wasn't really talking about it. It's just someone who can kind of calm them down a little bit and like he said, focus on the fact that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You don't need to kind of panic right now. But what do you think is the biggest issue? I mean, there's a lot of people talking about shot selection, and if I see the Celtics take one more long contested two,
I know that's been driving you insane. And it's got to be driving Stevens insane.
Yeah. Do you think that it's a simple fix like the starting lineup adjustment?
I think it's chemistry at this point, and I think it's lack of urgency.
Yeah.
I don't know that shuffling the starting lineup is going to really do much. I think it's more of getting a mindset that you're basically just what Kyrie said. They're not as good as they thought they were right now. Do they have the potential? Yeah, but a lot of teams have been put together with this, with great talent that have had great potential and that have flopped. I mean, You have to really, really form a great chemistry. And at this point, it feels like they're very disjointed. And what was weird watching the Portland game was, and maybe I was watching it wrong, I don't know, it almost felt like there was more chemistry when Rozier was on the court with everybody else. But then you're looking at Kyrie on the bench midway through the fourth, and you're like, damn, we need score. The Celtics need scoring. You got to get Kyrie back. So there's this conundrum of who's going to come out and who's going to stay in, because Kyrie and Rozier play two very different styles.
They do.
The offense plays very differently with the two of them in the game.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of difficulty finding that balance, like you said. And then they get into the late games, and there seems to be a lot of ball watching and just kind of staring at Kyrie and waiting for him to do something, which, isn't necessarily a terrible thing, because Kyrie can take over games. He hits he's been hitting a lot of, FU threes towards the end of these games, but there's a lot of ball watching and a lot of stagnant offensive possessions where there's just no movement. So it's about finding that balance and finding that rhythm that ultimately they've been looking for since opening night. And that's going to come as, Tatum matures and as Gordon gets back into his flow. There's a lot of things that kind of
Well, there's a great recipe coming up here, too, and that's a 5 to 6 game stretch of, 2 good teams followed by 4 to 5 pretty bad teams. And the Celtics, I think, will find their rhythm. And nothing helps chemistry and locker room issues more than winning. And I think a few home games, a few good wins will change just about everything.
Yes,
let's not forget we were talking late summer about how difficult this start of the season schedule would be.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised at all. I mean, even on this West Coast trip, I think I had them at 2-3.
Yeah, it's not the craziest thing in the world. You were hyping it, your opinion way before the season started, that this was going to be a tough start. It wasn't going to be easy. And with all that depth, that happens. People were talking about how they're going to balance this lineup from the get-go, and a lot of people on Twitter and stuff are reacting like that was never an idea in the offseason, but it always has been. So it's going to take some time. But it was promising to see Gordon Hayward. He played 31 minutes, which was his season high on Sunday against the Trailblazers, so that's a good thing. You mentioned Terry Rozier getting into the mix. I've always been a big Terry fan, but I'm having trouble. I'm not so sure that his role off the bench right now fits his style of play. Terry's not, in my opinion, as good as the primary ball handler. He's better working off the ball, and when he's been coming in off the bench, they have him as the primary ball handler, and I think he's been trying to force some shots, and it makes him lose some of his efficiency, and I don't know. I don't know if I like him coming off the bench as the primary ball handler as much as
But what's the choice, Chris?
Well,
that's a trade, and that's it.
Right. So there's not really, you're not going to have Marcus Smart come in and work as the primary ball handler.
I don't know. I mean, can you? I think Marcus could run the offense if he's disciplined enough.
He could. I'm just saying. I think Terry. I don't know. Terry needs to figure out working as the primary ball handler because I think he's much better and more comfortable as a secondary guy, and I'm having trouble with him off the bench right now.
I mean, it really shouldn't be a problem. Everybody on the Celtics, can handle the ball and initiate the offense.
Right.
I mean, it would be, and they're playing a lot of Al Horford with the second unit.
Yep.
And Al could definitely initiate the offense. I don't know, man. My face right now looks like Brad Stevens' face the last 5 games.
Brad face.
He has looked so frustrated.
Yeah, he has.
That poor guy.
He has. But he's taking ownership. He said they're not a well-coached team right now, so he's taking a lot of the heat on himself,
As he always does, and they're not. I mean, I think that there's some issues there that Brad has to work out.
Yeah.
I think he's trying to figure it out, too. It is definitely a different offensive team with Gordon Hayward in the game.
Completely. And there's that weird balance of trying to get everyone their shots while a lot of people are trying to get theirs. And you see a lot of, maybe not as aggressive play, and then other people who should be more aggressive. It's, again, I just keep going back to it, but it's all about finding that balance, which is really hard when you have a team this deep. But surprisingly enough, Marcus Morris seems to be the most consistent and efficient guy on this team.
It's a contract year.
It's a contract year, and he's making it worth his while. I mean, like you said earlier when we were talking about Rozier, there's a lot of talent around these guys, and plenty of them can benefit as working off the ball. And Marcus Morris has been great in catch-and-shoot situations, not much better than he has been previously in his career. I think he played 25 minutes on Sunday night. He was 5 for 11 from the field. He had 13 points. I mean,
he's having a career season. It's early, but
he's really been awesome. Yeah, and without him, Celtics might be in an even darker situation.
Well, and I mean, it's ironic because last year going in, and we've beaten this with a dead horse, but Morris was disgruntled, out of shape, started late because of the legal issues.
Yep.
He didn't really start to find his groove until well after the All-Star break. So seeing him come in so enthusiastic now, I'm wondering, and I don't know because we didn't travel, I'm wondering what their practice schedule has been.
Yeah.
Because there should be no better, with the exception of gameplay, there should be no better competition than those practices because that second unit is so strong.
Right.
And I'm just wondering if they're getting enough practice in because there just seems to be chemistry issues. Maybe it almost seems as if there's not plays being called.
Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of what we were saying before. There's just these stagnant offensive possessions where there's a lot of ball watching and guys just sitting above the break and no one's really moving.
Chris, it reminds me of when the team was led by Isaiah.
Yes, that is. It's kind of similar to that. I would agree with that because there was plenty of offensive possessions when that was
and there was
case.
Also plenty of slow starts and scoring droughts.
Yeah.
So, and you see, okay, that Isaiah-led team, whether it's that or last year's team with all the adversity and injuries, the Celtics still hammered out to the Eastern Conference Finals. I still feel this is an NBA Finals team, Chris. I really do. I feel like they could beat Toronto. I don't think Toronto. I think with the addition of Butler, the Sixers are still a ways away from being on the level of the Celtics. Mm-hmm. And I feel like come June, the ship's going to be right. But until then, I think it's going to be, I said it, until December, it's going to be a frustrating season.
Yeah, it's going to be rocky. You did, and I 100% agree. I don't think it's panic time. I don't think it's time to be nervous. This team has so much talent, and top to bottom, as much talent, I would say, as any team in the entire league. And again, they've got Chicago on Wednesday, then they've got Toronto and Utah over the weekend, which are tough. But then it goes Charlotte, the Knicks, the Hawks, the Mavericks, the Pelicans, which, tough game, but then it's Cavaliers, T-Wolves, Knicks, Bulls again. I mean,
it's the perfect recipe.
It is a good recipe. It really is. And besides the two matchups with the Pelicans and maybe the T-Wolves, they don't really have a really tough matchup until December 21st against Milwaukee.
And let's face it, I mean, if the Celtics are playing on all cylinders, the Pelicans and the T-Wolves can't play with them.
Right. And I mean, the Celtics even played with Milwaukee before this road trip. Like,
of course.
They beat the Bucks that Thursday before the trip. So
right. And I honestly think that it's a gut check for the Celtics too, not just because they have been really embarrassing themselves. It's not just playing poorly. They've been embarrassing themselves, but also because you're coming up on, I mean, Wednesday's game, if that's not a no-brainer win, then I don't know why. I start panicking. So Wednesday's game should be a Geno time. Then Friday, you got Toronto, the best team in the East right now. And I will say that loud because, it was annoying me. The BWA, prior to tip-off of the NBA season, saying they're the best team in the East. No, Toronto is right now. You've got them Friday.
Hey, I don't know if you remember this. Tristan Thompson said the Cavaliers are until someone dethrones them. Well, so I think it's the Cavaliers.
Right. But then it's the Jazz right after they got punked in Utah. Granted, there was no Kyrie in that game, but Gordon did not respond well to getting booed. It was just not a pretty game. And Utah fans, who are usually so docile, were vicious.
Yeah,
vicious.
They were pretty tough. What he played like 26 minutes. I think he had like 13 points or something like that.
Yeah, he was all right. Yeah. He has not been, and again, I don't want to get into, it's going to take time and all that nonsense. We know that. He has not had one game where I felt he's been Gordon Hayward. He looks like he's running with cinder blocks on his feet.
Yeah.
And I don't know, again, we know it's going to take time, but if we're still having this conversation by the All-Star break, Gordon may have to try to figure out how to change his game because the dude he's a multidimensional player. Right. And maybe there's a little bit of that this season, that athleticism that's not going to come back.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to work on that spot-up jumper because the dude can't throw it in the ocean.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just not missing. He's missing to the sides, long, short. He's all over the rim every single game.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right about him. The good thing about his game is that he's not like a slasher, like a Russell Westbrook type slasher. Right. He takes these wide circular angles towards the rim. So that benefits him in terms of getting back. But you're right. At some point, if it's post All-Star break and he's still not fitting and kind of feeling back
you
to
just have to adjust at that point.
Right. Otherwise, it's just going to hurt the team. It's just not
right. It's hurt himself, too. I mean, the guy can't have great confidence right now. And I'm not saying reinvent your game or go hire Markelle Fultz shooting coach. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, as players get older, they adjust their play. Now, Gordon is obviously not old yet, but his body is struggling still. So he has to hit those open jumpers, dude.
Yeah.
He has to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing where I look at it and I say, okay, I can understand, not being the athletic driving to the rim athletically the way he had in the past. And I do believe that will come back. But there are things that he should be doing right now. Hitting free throws, which I think he's struggling from the line.
Yeah.
Hitting open jumpers. I mean, that's just a timing thing.
Yeah, agreed.
And that should come back sooner than later. And if it doesn't, well, maybe they got to post them up. I don't friggin' know. I'm just saying we can't keep taking the wait and see approach past this group cluster of
this stretch
poor teams, right? If they come out of this stretch 500 or less, it's time for a change. I'm not saying
if you're having trouble with the Bulls, the Hornets, the Hawks, the Knicks,
Atlanta,
the Mavs, that's a
Lakers
problem.
Is right.
That's a problem.
Chris, I don't know about you, but I've recently joined The Athletic, basically because I wanted to support Clevis and Jared Weiss and Jay King, our good friends in the locker room, but also because they're sponsoring CLNS Network. So I got 40% discount. Chris, I've been uber impressed, not just with the site itself, but with the mobile app and with the in-depth articles. And our listeners could get 40% off too. Support the show, support CLNS, Celtics blog, all of us, and go on over to theathletic.com/The Garden, all lowercase. There you get 40% off. It's less than, I think it's a quarter of the price of a beer at TD Garden.
That's insane. That's insane.
That's crazy.
That's a
You're a
no-brainer.
member, right?
Oh, I 100% am. It's actually, this is not, a lot of times with advertisements, you got to kind of work it up a little bit. The Athletic is a no-brainer, in my opinion. I've been a subscriber for a while now.
And I think about it, too. You got Jared Weiss, former CLNS, former Celtics blog dude.
Yep.
Clevis Murray, former CLNS dude. Support your alumni at Celtics blog and CLNS and join the Athletic. If you join the Athletic, you get all the regional coverage as well. So you get the Athletic Boston, which is great.
Yeah, and the Athletic was with John Krasinski and Shem Sarnia. They were all over the Jimmy Butler saga. From day one.
John was Jeff Goodman's featured guest this week.
He was. So listen to the Good and Plenty podcast. That was a great show. I listened to that this morning.
It was awesome. I listened to it this morning, too. It's how I got all my juice for our Butler segment. No, I'm just kidding.
John was on that Jimmy Butler story from the get-go, but now, you just previously mentioned Markelle Fultz and the 76ers. Jimmy Butler obviously heading over to the Sixers. The trade was made official yesterday. He should make his debut tomorrow, Wednesday night. So obviously that makes the Eastern Conference a whole lot more interesting. Robert Covington was sent over to Minnesota in the deal. The Celtics...
What a polarizing guy. People either love Covington or they hate him.
People really did love him a lot there, and he was a good community guy, but also he was a great 3-and-D player that I feel like people really love 3-and-D guys now, because if you get a good one, it's like he immediately becomes a fan favorite, because he's knocking down threes and blocking shots, steals at the other end, whatever. But I think the Celtics quietly used to kind of feast on Robert Covington, particularly Jason Tatum last year. And so replacing him with someone like Jimmy Butler really changes things on the defensive side of the ball. Like, that is even though Covington is a great defender, but Butler is a major upgrade there for sure. What do you think about Butler going to the Sixers? I'm not totally convinced it's going to work offensively. I'm curious.
Well, you hate the Sixers too. You're biased.
Allegedly, I hate the. The Sixers and I don't always get along, but I'm not sure how this is going to work. Jimmy Butler is a guy who plays with the ball in his hand. Ben Simmons is a guy who thrives running an offense with the ball in his hand, because obviously he doesn't have a jump shot. I don't know how that's going to work with the two of them. Of course, Joel Embiid will be fine. He'll get his on the side there, but Boy,
he's playing good, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and I'm sure Brett Brown will have a formula here, but I'm not so sure how it's going to work offensively. It's a boom or bust deal, and I think it was a great move for them because they really needed to make something like that happen, but I don't know how this is going to work.
I don't know either. I mean, I think there's the technical aspects you mentioned with both Simmons and Butler being a ball dominant, but the other side of it too is he going to sign a long-term deal? Right. There's that in the background. Then there's Jimmy Butler has not always been a unifier in the locker room either. When he's not happy, nobody's happy.
Did you see last night Markelle Fultz's pump at the free throw line? He
I'm not like you, Chris. I don't have 15 TVs in my room with everyone on an NBA game.
15 TVs of League Pass and a Twitter feed. Yeah, I need to get a life. But they played Miami last night. They got a win, but you need to look up the highlight. He literally pump faked while taking a free throw. Was
there a late violation?
It was one of the. It should have been, but they don't call late violations anymore in the NBA. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. No joke. It was as bad as his free throw form. I think it was Kyle Neubeck, beat reporter for the Sixers, tweeted out the clip and said it was as bad as we've ever seen his free throw stroke. And it was, without question.
It's sad because when he goes to the line, I think everybody kind of covers their eyes. Even people who don't like Markelle feel bad for Markelle.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not and I've always had, butted heads with the Sixers in more ways than one, but I really do want him to succeed. I really do, because he had a great shot at Washington and he was a great scorer there and he had so much potential heading into the draft. There's nothing worse than seeing a guy that hyped go into the draft and just fail, like an Anthony Bennett.
I just think he just lacks mental toughness.
It's pretty clear that there's a lot going on upstairs there. Have
you ever seen any of those behind the scene clips where like on media day where they have like cue cards where the players have to read stuff.
Yeah.
And it says like insert your name, and like it would be like, hey, I'm Markelle Fultz, and he's like, hey, insert your name.
I'm insert name here, playing for insert team here. Yeah, poor guy.
Poor
See,
guy.
we're even ripping on him after each day. We feel bad for him. It doesn't stop. I mean, it sucks. It really sucks. But I think the biggest part of this Jimmy Butler trade, like Jimmy Butler isn't a guy who beats around the bush. Like if he sees Markelle Fultz shooting free throws like that in practice, he's going to like annihilate him. He's going to rip him apart.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that Jimmy Butler is a guy who will come into a locker room and boast someone's confidence. I hope.
My last memories of Jimmy Butler were that Bulls series.
Yeah, you always go back to that. That bugs
I know.
You.
I just
that really bugs
his body language at the podium was terrible. They were terrible as soon as Rondo got injured. He kind of gave up.
Jimmy Butler is a guy he's kind of like fallen into every single NBA stereotype over the last couple of years. And I'm not sure if he just leans into it to get his way like he did in Minnesota. Obviously it worked, but he is not a fan favorite across the league because of his actions. And of course, like he was in the series against the Bulls, he burned that bridge with Nick Gelso at that point.
Like he's actually like counting, like he cares. But I mean, I have a hard time getting over that. I have a long memory for stuff like that, and I've not really seen him do much in the playoffs since then. So
yeah,
I can't really say anything. And you know, on a Philadelphia team that the Celtics completely outplayed mentally last season, with no Kyrie, with no Gordon, and that's tired too because now they're back and they're struggling. But just think about that. You know, they were mentally squashed by the Celtics.
Yeah.
They could be mentally squashed by their own player in Jimmy Butler if he decides to have a temper tantrum.
Again, it's a total boom or bust here. It could really, really work well, and they could cement themselves, if he signs long term, cement themselves at the top of the Eastern Conference, right up there towards the top of the Eastern Conference for the next couple of years, or it could be a dysfunctional offense.
Or he could leave.
Right, he could leave because you never know what he's going to do. He's pretty unpredictable. But either way, they're going to have a really good defense. I don't think that's a question. I think that's he cements them as one of the best defenses in the Eastern Conference, maybe even the NBA.
The other thing to think about Butler is he's not the youngest guy in the locker room there. I mean, what is he? 30, 31?
Jimmy Butler is, I've got the old Google machine up right now. He's 29 years old, so he does have some time.
Okay, so he's going to be 30.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, he's got more time in him, but I don't know. I'm not convinced.
What do you think this does for the Eastern Conference in terms of the hierarchy in the conference? I mean, you've got the Bucks playing some really good basketball right now. You have the reinvented Sixers with Butler included.
Again.
The Celtics loaded with talent but struggling, and obviously the Raptors just crushing it early on. So what would you think this puts them up with the Raptors? Where do you think this? I
think it's going to be right where we thought when we were doing preseason predictions as far as the East goes. I think it's still, and maybe not in this order, but Boston, Toronto, Philadelphia, Milwaukee. I think you had Philly down lower. That's because there was no Butler, but I always thought they were going to be a top 4 seed. I mean, the Celtics, we'll see how they shake out in the coming months, because if it were last year, I would say, look, they don't necessarily need that number 1 seed, but I don't know how that's going to feel this year, especially if Toronto is going to get that number 1 seed, and the Celtics always suck in Toronto. They're so good at home.
It is pretty wild right now that you could make a solid argument for the top 4 seeds in the East being right in line with the top 4 seeds in the West. Of course, you have the Warriors, who are far and above everyone.
Right.
But it's pretty impressive. It's top heavy, but the East is very good at the top.
Well, and it seems like it's been that way for the last 10 years. I mean, there's been a sequence there in the last couple of years where the East has really fallen off, and it was LeBron and everybody else. But, since the shift in power went from the East to the West, the East has settled in as being very top heavy, and then that bottom half are bottom feeders. But it's pretty competitive come playoff time because everybody's fighting for a playoff position.
Right.
I mean, I definitely, it's some sort of combination, and I'm not breaking news here or being Albert Einstein, but it is some sort of combination between Milwaukee, Philly, Toronto, and Boston. I like Milwaukee, but I think they're going to settle in. I don't think that how dominating they're playing right now is going to continue. And I haven't seen their schedule, nor have I seen Toronto's schedule. So I don't know what are they right now, sitting 10-2 or
They're
something?
Toronto's 12-2, I believe. Yeah, 12-2.
12-2. That's a damn good start.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But again, it's a matter of who's played who so far, and the Celtics, and not making up excuses, but they have had a horrific schedule, and this adversity early usually leads to good things in the long run.
Yeah, maybe like you said it earlier, kind of like a wake-up call or a shock to their system a little bit, which really wouldn't hurt right now.
I think it's almost like a gut check, an ego check, because they were so damn confident coming in, as they should have been, but they were bordering cocky. And what had shocked me, Chris, is, being here in Boston, the Boston media hasn't even started on them yet.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like you were kind of prepared for this. Yeah, which isn't a bad thing, because rather than having everyone jump on them, they're a little more patient. Even Boston radio has been patient. Which
well, that's what I mean. They've been very patient.
Yeah.
And I think that the biggest, coming out as we're closing here, the biggest, I guess, watching points for me are that Tatum getting benched in the second half of Utah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But that was concerning. And
it happened. I think it might have happened in Phoenix too, as well.
Whenever it happened, it happened in 2 games. You're saying?
I think so. Well, the Micah Shrewsbury quote was in 1 game, but I think Smart started the second half in 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching Jason Tatum closely. I don't want to say the Kobe effect, but it does seem like there has been some Kobe effect there, and so I'm watching him with a little bit of concern. Gordon, I'm still patiently waiting. Gordon just needs one breakout 30-point game, and I think he's going to be okay.
He'll get back into his rhythm. I'm not worried about
I think he needs a confidence boost,
Yeah.
And then, the Jaylen Brown situation isn't pretty either. So the youngins who were so good last season, we know they have it in them. What's going to light the spark? And, maybe it was Kyrie's comments. Maybe it was Marcus's comments.
Yeah.
Marcus is the longest tenured Celtic. Everybody forgets that.
Yeah, he is. He's going to be their leader in there. Him and Al, I think, are really going to head this resurgence if it does happen.
Yeah, and I don't want to hear anything negative about Al Horford ever. Ever. It's off limits.
Yeah, but I'll be at practice this afternoon on Tuesday afternoon, so we'll have some sound from there. See what Brad Stevens has to say. See if we can hear from many of the players. They have a 2:00 practice at the Auerbach Center this afternoon, and then
should be interesting.
Yeah, and then we'll be at the Garden for the Chicago Bulls and Boston Celtics tomorrow
Wednesday.
night.
Yeah. Yep.
So we'll keep monitoring this.
Before you close up shop, let's preview this Bulls game. And real quick, blowout, not blowout. What are you thinking? Are we going to see Gino?
I hope we do. I think we do. I think we do, because I think it'll be good. They're back home. They're off the road. It's tough. That was a long road trip. They were gone for like 10 days. So I think the fact that they're able to come back home and the Bulls are starting, like Ryan Arcidiacono has been starting games for them recently. There's no reason why we shouldn't get Gino.
That should happen. And the other thing to think about too, Chris, is the time change. I think they were in 2 different time zones in the course of a week.
They were bouncing around, yeah.
Yeah, 2 or 3 different time zones. And no matter what, these people are human. It does affect them.
Yeah, it does. So let's hope for Gino tomorrow night. Chicago Bulls, a little bit of an easier matchup compared to Portland and Utah and Phoenix, the powerhouse that is Phoenix.
My God.
Out there. Nick, I'll talk to you later this week.
Chris, I'll see you at the Garden.